So this is converting to QuickBooks Online, and this next hour we're going to be talking about converting from QuickBooks Desktop over to QuickBooks Online. Now I like to have my sessions to be very interactive, so you have that question box that you can type your questions in as we go, and I will do my best to answer them as we go along through the webinar. We also have Leah Hartman from Intuit behind the scenes answering some of your questions. So if I don't address it verbally during the presentation, she will do her best to answer your questions behind the scenes via the questions box. And most of you had entered in a question into the question box to let me know that you could hear me, so that's great. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So this is all about converting from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. All right, and this is me. My name is Heather Satterlee. I am an Advanced Certified Pro Advisor. I'm also co-author of the QuickBooks Online certification. It looks like 8% of you are certified QuickBooks Pro Advisors, and about a quarter of you belong to the Pro Advisor program. When I demo today, I'm actually going to be demoing how to create a new QuickBooks Online company from within QBOA. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that I touch on where you can actually sign up for that, so that you'll be able to go through and finish the workflows that we're talking about. All right, I'm also a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network. I've been doing this for about 4 years. I absolutely love it. One of my favorite things is to talk to other accountants and bookkeepers about QuickBooks because I love the program so much. I've been working with QuickBooks products since the mid-1990s. I love it. I think it's a great program. I have always recommended it to my clients. And when QuickBooks Online came out back in the early 2000s, I wasn't a huge fan, but once they did the revamp about 4 or 5 years ago, I completely fell in love with it. So we're going to talk about things we should consider when we're looking at QuickBooks Desktop and thinking about doing a conversion to QuickBooks Online, and then we're actually going to go through the process of doing that. So again, I really welcome your questions, and let's go ahead and do go through a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll dive right in. All right, so CPE information. In order to receive CPE, you must stay in for the entire webinar. I'm going to provide to you a CPE keyword during the webinar, and at the end, you'll be prompted to select the correct keyword from the poll that I'll put up. The certificates will be emailed directly to you within 3 weeks of today's training, and it's going to be sent to the same email address that you used to register for this training. And there's a little note there. If you add the email address that you see on your screen to your approved email list, that will make sure that you get your CPE certificate, and it is up to you to make sure that you keep a copy of that for your records. So, so that's CPE information. As far as the handouts today, these are the handouts. You may see they may look a little bit different. There was a template, an old template that I think maybe might be on the handouts that you have, but it is all the same content. So even though my slides are maybe a different color or look a little bit different, all of the content is exactly the same. So no worries about that. Just understand that all of the content that's on the slide, totally the same, even though the borders may look a little bit different. Okay, these are our learning objectives for today. After completing this webinar, we should be able to list the steps to convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. We'll recognize some of the limitations of converting. We'll recognize alternatives to converting, and then we're going to identify things to do after the conversion. These are some additional resources that you have available to you. Again, there's our link to download the course slides. That should also be in the chat box as well. So there's some, some guides here that you can take a look at. There's an overview guide which has some great information, talks about what we're going to go over in great detail. We have a QBO Conversion Resource Center. We have some videos on converting from Enterprise, some details, a checklist that Stacy Kildell put together to help you through that process, and then a conversion step-by-step video as well. So these are all additional resources after this webinar that you can use to help you with your conversion. All right, before we get started, I just want to show you guys, just in case you haven't yet signed up for QuickBooks Online Accountant. Now, QuickBooks Online Accountant is a central hub where you can access all your QBO companies from within one dashboard. To sign up for the QuickBooks Online Accountant, you're going to go to quickbooks.intuit.com. You're going to click on this accountant link and then QuickBooks Online Accountant, and you're just going to click sign up right here. Okay, totally free. The QuickBooks Cloud Pro Advisor program is also free. There's some great benefits in there. You can find out all about all those benefits, you know, via a different webinar. We won't go over that today, but you definitely want to find out. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. So once I have signed up for QBOA, this is what it looks like. So this is the inside of QuickBooks Online Accountant, and you'll see that I have 4 different QuickBooks Online companies here. A lot more than just 4. But we see 4 this though. All right, so let's go ahead and keep going. If, like I said, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the question box, and either myself or Leah will answer them for you. Okay, so let's talk about QuickBooks Online. Is a great, you know, it's a great program. It's a great general ledger program, but we want to make sure that it's the right fit for our client. Okay, most of the time, it's a great fit for our clients, but every once in a while there's a feature that we need to consider. Either we need to consider, it might be a, how do I put this? It might be an impediment to them switching over to QuickBooks Online. And I just want to go through a few of those before we get started. Before I do, somebody's asking, is it hard to convert back to desktop after converting to online? Scott's asking that. And Scott, there is a way to do that. You know, it's not difficult in the sense that the process to send the information back down to QuickBooks Desktop isn't difficult. What you do need to keep in mind is that when you send information, just like we're going to see there's steps that we have to do in order to import into QuickBooks Online, there would be additional steps you would have to do sending QuickBooks Online data back down to desktop. All right, so let's talk about the best fit. So I'm going to go through each one of these features and talk about the different options for you. So one is progress invoicing. In QBO, we don't have a built-in progress invoicing function, but we do have a workaround. So Stacy K, if you go to stacyk.net, she actually has a progress invoicing workaround that you can learn about. And what it does is it uses the estimate feature inside QuickBooks Online and invoicing to actually mimic a progress invoicing scenario that you would see in QuickBooks Desktop. So you can check that out. Now, with that being said, while that's a great workaround, if you're doing a lot of these, you may want to consider finding an app that would allow you to do that, and I think there's a few out there. You can always go to apps.com. Apps.com is a website where you can find apps that integrate with QuickBooks Online. I'll go ahead and open that up and show it to you. So you can find apps that you can integrate with QuickBooks Online that will add additional functionality to the program. So if we were looking for invoicing apps, I could just type in invoicing, and it would give me a list of different invoicing apps that I could use, and I might be able to find a product that I could integrate with QuickBooks Online that would fulfill that need. Okay. We also receiving a partial purchase order. We do have purchase orders in QBO, but we have the same thing. We have the same issue in QBO. If we wanted to receive a partial purchase order, there's a workaround for that as well. And the workaround was really just to receive the purchase order, make a copy of the original one, and just update the remaining amounts. So you can definitely do it. It's just not built in. It's not as streamlined as what you see in the desktop program. Integrated labor costing. So while you can, job cost to the sense that I can assign expenses to a customer, I don't have integrated job labor costing like I do inside QuickBooks Desktop with the payroll. So in Desktop, when I'm using the payroll subscription inside Desktop, it does a really nice job of allocating the labor costs, including payroll taxes and workers' comp, to the jobs based on the number of hours worked. We don't have that same functionality inside QuickBooks Online. So the workaround is we could enter a journal entry to assign the distribution of the labor to each job. Okay, so when I went into QuickBooks, I could do a journal entry, hit the salaries, and then allocate it manually using a journal entry. Again, if I have a lot of this, that may be problematic, and it's definitely something that we want to consider when we're looking at whether or not this client is a good fit to be converted over to QBO. With online bill pay inside QuickBooks Desktop, we have online bill pay as an add-on feature. There's an app for that we can use with QuickBooks, which is actually really awesome. It's bill.com, and bill.com will sync, actually it syncs with both Desktop or QuickBooks Online, and it's really a great way for you to automate that bill pay feature. Sales orders, if you need sales order functionality, keeping track of what inventory is on hand and what step in the sales process you are, you could use an app like SOS Inventory. Same thing for inventory. For a regular inventory, we could use an inventory app. And it says here group or assembly items. However, just in the last 6 weeks, Intuit has added the new feature where we now have bundles inside QBO. So really only assembly items should be on this slide because we actually do have that group item functionality now in QBO. So if we needed assembly items or our clients were light manufacturing where they need to actually follow through that manufacturing process, we're going to look to an app for that. And again, we could go to that apps.com and kind of look at apps that will integrate. Besides SOS Inventory, some of the other ones that I know about, there's Exact Online that does that, and I believe there is Seventh Stage is another one that would be able to help you with that. IIF, transaction imports, if we need to import transactions into QBO from Excel spreadsheets, then Transaction Pro Importer could be an app that would be able to, to import our transactions. And then price levels. Currently, we don't have price levels in QBO, so if you were interested in price levels, you could look for an app. And the example they give here is SOS Inventory. And Carol, I have not put up the CPE question yet, so no worries there. Okay, conversion highlights. So we're going to talk about, what we're talking about here is what actually is going to be converted over in QBO. So account numbers do convert and your hierarchy remains. What I mean by that is if in QuickBooks Desktop I have sub-accounts, those will get pulled over during the conversion and they get pulled over very, very nicely. One thing to keep in mind is that QuickBooks Online also has a detail type. So in addition to the regular account type, such as asset, fixed asset, accounts receivable, liability, or equity, we also have detail types in QBO. So when you're doing the conversion, we won't see those detail types come over. You would actually have to go through and select those if you wanted to. Right now, that detail type doesn't really have a stated functionality in QBO, so it's not super important to go through and allocate those now. But at some point, that would be something that you'd have to do as an additional cleanup. But you don't need to worry about that right now. It really has no bearing at all on the conversion process. The audit trail does not convert. So your audit trail in QuickBooks Desktop does not convert over, but QBO does have an audit log. So from the time you convert going forward, you will have the audit log, which not only captures changes to transactions in QuickBooks, but it also captures everything that happens in the program. So my audit log shows me if somebody logs in, shows me if somebody logs out, if they add a new list item, if they add a new user, pretty much everything that happens in the company, including if apps are accessing the company and making changes, that's also getting captured as well. So pretty comprehensive. But if you want to, you're going to want to keep a copy of that audit trail from the desktop program. So either just keep an archived copy of QuickBooks, or you can go ahead and print your audit log out or save it as a PDF or whatever you need to do, because that will not come over. Inactive accounts, customers, vendors with a balance will become active and will become active again. So if I have in QuickBooks a customer and they have it, the client has it and they owe the money from like 3 years ago and they didn't want to look at it anymore and they made it inactive, when you convert over, that customer is going to become active inside QuickBooks Online. If they're inactive and they have a zero balance, they're still going to come over, but they'll still be inactive in QBO. So if you don't want those inactive items to come over during the conversion, then I recommend that you go ahead and clean up those list items inside QuickBooks Desktop before you do the conversion. And you can do that by doing a condense and archive. What happens with a condense and archive in Desktop is it goes back through and it changes transactions from, you set a date that you want to condense prior to. So for example, say I wanted to condense a file for transactions from 12/31/2014 prior. What QuickBooks will do is it'll remove the actual transactions and replace them with journal entries so that I can still have my year-to-year reporting capabilities. When it does that, it actually removes the details related to the items and the customers and the vendors. So there's actually an option when you do that condense to delete any list items that are not being used in transactions, and that's a way that you can really quickly clean up your list before you do your conversion. And they're going to convert as active, not inactive. So if I'm doing a conversion with payroll, then I want, and I let somebody go, back in June, and I made them inactive in QuickBooks Desktop. When I do the conversion, they're going to show up on my active employee list, and I'll have to go through and make those inactive later. The closing date and reconciliations, the closing date password doesn't convert, but the closing date does. So the closing date will come over fine, and we'll just have to go back in and edit that setting inside QBO. And reconciled transactions remain cleared, but our reconciliation reports don't come over. So my beginning balances, when I first go in to do my first reconciliation inside QBO, my cleared balance should be correct, but I'm not going to see any of those reconciliation reports. Customer information, so price levels won't convert. Remember, we said that that was one of the things that we would need to find a third-party app for. They're not going to convert. Customer types won't convert, and credit limits and job status don't convert. With the QuickBooks Desktop custom fields, those are not going to come over either. Sales reps in QuickBooks Desktop will come over as custom fields in QBO. So if you're utilizing sales reps inside Desktop, QuickBooks Online is going to automatically create a new custom field called sales rep, and it will populate the information into that custom field. All right, estimates and POs. So POs convert, but only QuickBooks Online Plus has the ability to create new ones. So the POs will come over in another subscription, but you won't be able to create any new ones. And the connections between estimates, invoices, and POs, vendor bills, those connections aren't going to come over. So you know how when you're in QuickBooks Desktop, you can actually click you can click the, I think it's Control-H to look at the linked transaction. You're going to lose that once you convert over to QBO. Invoices do convert. Sales tax will be migrated to the Sales Tax Center. It'll keep their existing grouping if it was part of a multiple rate tax item, and invoices will show a single item in the sales tax box with the correct breakdowns. Okay, so don't have to worry about that either. The customer message list, while the original message will exist, and you can still add a customer message on transaction, there isn't a drop-down menu to choose from. Each message has to be entered manually on the form, so we're not going to have a drop-down to choose from in QBO. And then the custom list, fields on list. So we get 3 in QBO. So if the sales reps were being used, that's going to come over, and then you can use the other fields, however you choose once you get over to QBO. Payroll conversion. So if you're using a payroll subscription inside QuickBooks Desktop, most of the information is going to come over. What isn't converted is the direct deposit setup, the e-filing setup. You do get year-to-date, so your year-to-date information is going to come over. You're not going to have your prior period pay history. Your local taxes will come over as deductions, and you're going to need to set those up again. And then the workers' comp isn't going to come over either. So what Intuit has said to us is for 70% of QuickBooks US desktop migrators, everything comes over just fine. And every once in a while we have an issue where something doesn't come over, and it's usually because the setup inside the setup in the desktop program wasn't set up correctly. So when it was converted over, either a field wasn't able to be imported correctly. And in that case, you have, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, you have 60 days from the date you create the QBO company to re-import the data. So if something's set up incorrectly, we can actually go back and correct it. So we only need to do payroll setup for employees that are paid in this calendar year. All right, so we're going to want to go back and do that. And then after completing the payroll setup, customers should be inactive. You should inactivate them. So So yeah, so the pay details, and Scott's asking, it says pay details is not converted. So the pay details is converted. The items are going to come over, and the taxes are going to come over. The slide is a little bit ambiguous as far as that goes. They do come over, but there is going to be some additional setup that you're going to have to complete, and you want to make sure that you go through line by line to make sure that everything came over correctly. Okay, so you know, the other thing that I would want to mention, well, a couple more. One is, if you have a payroll subscription in Desktop, that subscription is not going to come over to QBO. You're going to have to actually set up a new payroll subscription. Okay, so if you have enhanced payroll inside Desktop, you're going to need to subscribe to QuickBooks Online Payroll to get the same type of functionality inside QuickBooks Online. Okay, so, and the other thing I want to mention that is, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to get that payroll inside QBO, that subscription activated, and there's actually a banking authorization that you have to do where you have to verify the banking information. They send to debit and a credit to the account, and you have to verify that. That takes a little bit of time. So generally the rule of thumb is allow yourself about 2 weeks before you run your first payroll in QBO. So go ahead and get that set up, have them continue to use the desktop program, and then once you're sure the payroll subscription is set up correctly, then you can go ahead and do that conversion. If you, let's see, if you set up a forward, there's a note here, I just want to read it. It says, if you set up a 401k item with any of these, you know, Intuit payroll offerings, it does not create the 401k account. Okay, so just because you set up an item doesn't mean that it's creating an account that you're going to be able to send, you know, money to or other information for. You have to set that up outside of QuickBooks, and then the, you know, the item inside the payroll option is just basically how you keep track of it. And then you're going to administer that 401k program out at the other, you know, at the 401k administration site. Okay. All right, sales tax conversion. So if you have, QuickBooks Online supports multiple sales tax rates, and you're able to assign different agencies and rates as needed. Any sales tax groups that you have in Desktop will convert, but they're going to come over as one combined rate. So the other thing to keep in mind is that the items, and the items when they come over, we have one single sales tax payable liability account inside QuickBooks Desktop. Each agency has its own sales tax liability account inside QuickBooks Online. So you may see some differences there on your balance sheet when you do the conversion, okay, because it's going to create these new, you know, these new items when we do the conversion. So sales tax conversion notes: for each sales tax payable account you had in Desktop, there's going to be one in QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online creates a sales tax agency payable account for each sales tax jurisdiction. Sales tax items become a single sales tax payable account, and then if you used group items, those are going to become a multiple rate group tax as a single tax rate in QBO. Okay, so there's going to be some additional setup that you're going to need to do. And I'm going to show you an import summary report that'll kind of point those things out to you as well. I'll show you that in a little bit as well. Okay, so the latest QBO updates, recent conversion improvements. So over the past 6 months or so, memorized transactions now come over as recurring transactions. So if you were utilizing memorized transactions in Desktop, when you do the conversion, you'll find those in the recurring transactions screen. Okay. Multi-currency, oops, I need to update that slide. Note to self, we have the little Y hanging out down here. So I'll have to go back and finish that. So multi-currency, you can now convert desktop files with multi-currency turned on, and it will come over, and then you'll just want to make sure that you verify the multi-currency. Your home currency will remain the same once you get over to QuickBooks Online. So this is huge. You know, there was no way to convert a desktop file that had the multi-currency turned on, even if you didn't have it, you know, active. Okay, so there's also a note here that if multi-currency was turned on by accident in your desktop file and you never used it, you know, we probably don't want to convert because the preference is automatically going to be turned on during the conversion process. So if I had multi-currency in Desktop and I never used it, not a huge deal, but if I convert that to QBO, then multi-currency is going to be turned on in the QBO company, and I may not need it. So in that case, we probably want to, create a new QBO company, set it up, and then use a program like Transaction Pro Importer or Z-Access to bring the transactions in. And that way you don't have to deal with the multi-currency in QBO. All right, and it's time for our first CPE keyword, or actually we only get one CPE keyword, lobster. I love lobster. I just had lobster the other day. One of the things I didn't mention about myself, I'm in Rhode Island. So Rhode Island is up in the Northeast. We're just south of Boston, and we have lots of lobster here, and I'm really happy about that because I absolutely love lobster. It's so delicious, and we have great lobster rolls. Anybody else with me? Anybody love lobster? I know the lobster down south is really different from the lobster up here. We get these nice giant claws. I don't think you guys get those big claws down there. So Scott's never tried lobster, and Cheryl loves it. Yes, I love it too. I just had it. So when my mother lives out in Colorado, and every time she comes to visit, we have like a lobster fest. We get lobsters, and the whole family eats them, and they're delicious. So Marie wants to know what we do. The lobster word, that's a keyword. So at the end of this webinar, I'm going to put up a poll, and you're going to need to know that lobster is the keyword, and you'll put that in, and that way you'll get your CPE credit. So Carol likes the butter, not the lobster. I like both. So, and yeah. So okay, everybody got that CPE keyword, and hopefully we'll keep moving. Perfect. Okay, so let's convert. We're going to convert from QuickBooks Desktop. I'm going to be using QuickBooks Desktop 16 Accountant Edition to show you the conversion today, and we're going to do that to QuickBooks Online. So let's go ahead and do that. A couple of notes. Before you begin the QuickBooks conversion, you want to make sure that you're in single user mode, in QuickBooks Desktop. You also want to make sure that you move your file locally to your hard drive of the computer that you're using. So if your desktop file is located on a network drive, you want to copy it locally before you do the conversion, because you can end up with data integrity issues. The other thing that you want to consider doing is sometimes when we're using QuickBooks Desktop, links between the transactions can get corrupted or broken. A good practice is to create and restore a portable company file. What that does is it goes back and it basically re-indexes those links. And it actually works kind of like defragging your hard drive. You know how when we defrag our hard drive, it kind of makes things, improves the performance, and kind of cleans up our data. The same type of thing is happening with the QuickBooks Desktop file when you create and restore a portable company. Okay, so the first step to do our conversion is we have to create the QuickBooks Online account. And we have a couple of options here. Now we want to create the account. This slide says that we can do it via QuickBooks.com, and we can, and I'll tell you why that might be a good idea in a minute. But we can create the QuickBooks Online company right from within QuickBooks Online Accountant. If you are going to be using the wholesale billing, and wholesale billing allows you to buy QBO subscriptions at 50% off the retail price for the life of the subscription, then you could do that. The other option is you can sign up for this subscription via QuickBooks.com. One of the advantages, and you can, if you're not using wholesale billing, this is a little confusing. If you're not using wholesale billing, you can still create the QBOA company inside QuickBooks, the QuickBooks Online company inside QBOA, and just choose to have the client paid directly. One of the advantages of going out to QuickBooks.com and signing up there is that you'll get that 30-day free trial. So if it's a situation where you want to make sure it's going to be suitable for your client, you may want to go ahead and go out to QuickBooks.com and start the trial there, and then add yourself as an accountant user. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to create the QBOA company from within QuickBooks Online. So I'm right in here inside QuickBooks Online, and to create the new QBO company, I'm going to click Add Client, and then I would just put in the client's name. I'm going to use myself as an example here. So I'm going to put Heather's company, and then my email address, okay, and then I can choose how I want this to be displayed in my client list. Just a little tip there for you. Click Next. And then this is where I'm going to choose the QuickBooks product. So I can choose between Essentials and Plus and either with or without payroll. If you notice here, I can't choose a Simple Start subscription, right? I can't choose that in QBOA. So if my client needs Simple Start, I'm going to have to go out to QuickBooks.com and subscribe there and then add myself as an accountant user. So we'll go ahead and say Plus. And then here's where I'm going to choose the billing options. So right here I can choose my firm will pay, which means I'm going to get 50% off the life of the subscription forever, or I'm going to choose my client will pay, and at that point I'll have 24 hours to put in the billing information, the credit card information, before the account is inactivated. Okay, so this is where you're going to choose that. So if I'm paying, I'm going to pay for it, so it's going to be on my wholesale billing account, and if my client pays, then they're going to have to put in their credit card information within 24 hours. Okay, and then I choose the master admin. Typically in our practice our client is the master admin, but if you're doing all of your clients' work in-house, then you're probably going to be the master admin. And then you'd put in your client's email, and then click Next. And then here you would choose which of your team members are going to have access to the company. Okay. Once I'm done, I would just click Save, and that would create the new QBO company. Okay. And then I would be able to import my QuickBooks Desktop information, into there. So we would go ahead and we create that. Once I create it, I'm not going to save this because I don't want to actually add a new company. Once I had saved it, what would happen is I would see the new company here inside my client list. When I clicked on the little QB icon here, it would actually launch the Setup Wizard. Okay, so it would launch a Setup Wizard. I've already gone through the Setup Wizard, so you're not going to see it here on this company, but this is our sample company. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click back out of here and jump back into the slides. So my other option is to go back out to QuickBooks.com, and I could just start a trial. And in that case, I would just, I could, click on free trial and then choose the subscription level. And then I would want to invite myself as an accountant user to add it to my QBOA. And definitely you want to do that before you do the conversion. That's really important. There's an import summary report that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. If you do the conversion without being a QuickBooks Online accountant user, or accountant user, then you will not get that import summary report. It's really important, and I'll reiterate that in a few minutes. Okay. All right. So those are the two ways that we can sign up. All right. Next step is we want to make sure that our QuickBooks Desktop file is suitable for the conversion, and to do that, we're going to check the targets. So in QuickBooks Desktop, we're going to hit the F2 button to check the number of targets. And the targets must be less than 350,000 in order to convert. Okay, so inside QuickBooks, and I actually have a desktop file here. So right here, and if I press F2, then this brings up the product information screen. And then right here is where I see my targets. Okay, and if it's 350,001, I'm going to have an issue. Now, if I tried to convert this file and it had more than that, it may ask me if I just want to import the lists and opening balances, and that could work for you too. Okay, so that's the F2 screen. All right, let me get back to where we need to be. Okay, so we're going to check our targets. The other thing is, if you're getting error 500 when importing, remember you've got to be in single user mode, right? So you've got to be in single user mode, and it has to be local on your machine. So you've got to copy that QuickBooks Desktop file locally to your C drive before you start this process, or you're going to get an error message. Okay. All right, next, once I'm inside my QuickBooks Desktop file, I'm going to verify and rebuild. Okay, what that's going to do is it's going to find any issues that may have happened within my QuickBooks Desktop file. So we have corruption issues. There's all kinds of reasons why there might be a corruption, and the verify will find those errors, and then the rebuild will correct them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Utilities, and then I'm going to choose Verify Data. I'm going to click OK, and it's going to go through the verify process. This is a pretty small file, so it shouldn't take too long. It should be pretty quick. And if I have any errors in this company, it's going to automatically ask me to rebuild the data file. I feel like you should probably rebuild the data file anyway, because sometimes there's errors in the data file that this verification process misses. And if you do the rebuild, then you're more likely to fix errors, before you do the conversion. We want our QuickBooks Desktop file to be in the best possible shape before we do the conversion. So our next step is we're going to go back over to this File menu, choose Utilities, and then we're going to rebuild the data. It's going to make you back up. You have to make a backup before you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and it's going to go ahead and back up the data, and then it's going to go right into that rebuild process. And this, depending on the size of your file, this could go really fast or it could take a really long time. I've seen rebuilds that take more than an hour. If those files, just saying, most of those files were over 350,000 targets. So if you're working in a file that has less than 350 targets, typically it's not going to take very long. So the rebuild has completed. If there was issues here, it probably would have told you. I can click View Issues if I want to look at them. I'm just going to go ahead and click Close. Okay. The next thing that I would typically do, and it's not on the slide, is I would go through and I would clean up my list. So I would go through the chart of accounts, I would go through the customer list, I would go through the vendor list, and I would make sure that it was squeaky clean and looked exactly the way that I want. Ooh, sorry, that sounded awful. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was my mouse, my little scrolly bar. Sorry about that. So I would go ahead and clean it up, and then once I know that my QuickBooks Desktop file looks good, my last step is I'm going to go through, I'm going to choose the company right here. I'm going to choose Export Company to QuickBooks Online. And then I'm going to log in to my QBOA account. Okay, so I'm going to put in the email that I log into. I'm going to go ahead and put this in so you can actually see it. And don't you hate passwords sometimes? I certainly do, and I know what I just did. So let me do this real quick. This is just a temp company. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and it's going to bring up all of the companies that I am able to import my data into. So if I had companies that were past that 60 days, they're not going to be in this list. So I'm going to go ahead and choose, this is the one I want to import into, right? So I'm going to choose that one. If I had a whole bunch, I'd need to be careful here, right? Because I could import into the wrong one. I just also want to point out real quick, if you're using QBOA and you want to use your books in QBOA, that's that free QuickBooks Online subscription that you get when you subscribe, you would just choose the firm. So these are the two firms, these are two test companies that I use. I could actually import the desktop information into my books or into your books in QBOA, okay, and convert over. And that's a really great step, for you to get acclimated to QBO, is to do that conversion for your own firm and work in QBO before you start supporting your clients. I'm going to go ahead and choose the consulting business, and then I'm just going to click Continue, okay. And then what it will do is it will send all of my information up to the Intuit servers, and it will email me once the conversion is completed. Okay, so here it's saying we're transferring your data now. When it's done, we'll let you know. So I'm going to wait now until I get that email from Intuit telling me that my QuickBooks Desktop company has been converted over to QBO. I don't want to click into that QBO company until I get that email, because they're doing stuff behind the scenes, and if I jump in there, I might corrupt my data inside QBO. So I'm going to be patient and wait for that. All right, let's jump right back into our, if I can find my mouse here, right back into our slides. So we're going to go right back through what I just showed you. So we're going to go into QuickBooks Desktop, company menu, export to QuickBooks Online, log into our QuickBooks Online, and then choose the company that we want to import into. Okay? All right. If I had inventory now, I didn't have inventory. I didn't have inventory in this file, but if I did, it's going to ask me if I want to bring the inventory over. And you need to keep in mind that QuickBooks Desktop, except for QuickBooks Enterprise with Advanced Inventory, uses the average inventory cost method, accounting method. QuickBooks Online uses FIFO. So if I'm converting from an average cost inventory system to a FIFO inventory system, that's a change in accounting method. And two things are going to happen. Number one, I'm going to need to contact the tax preparer to let them know so they can do anything they need to do, in regards to the IRS. And the second thing is I'm going to have differences in my balance sheet and in my inventory cost valuation. So if I'm going to be converting inventory, I want to pick a start date. And typically what I say is your start date is most likely going to be the first day of the year, so that your trial balance, everything from the prior years is fine, and you have that adjustment in the current fiscal year so that you can deal with that this year and you're not making any changes to prior years. Okay? If you have multi-currency, you may be asked to confirm your home currency. So go ahead and put those changes in if you need to, and then you would just click continue. So it's going to go out to the Intuit servers. It's going to take, it's going to convert the file for you, and then you're going to eventually get an email saying, hey, your file's ready. Let's go finish the setup. And you'll just go back into your QuickBooks Online, and then you'll click on the client company, and you'll go through and you'll do the process of verifying that the information came over correctly. Okay? Okay, you can convert only during the first 60 days after the subscription start date. So if I do it today, then I have 60 days from today to import my data. You can purge your data if needed by changing the URL to what you see on this slide. Okay, for your own books, for your books inside QBOA, you have 1,060 days to import your data there. Okay, so you're not stuck to that 60 days for your books. You are for all of your clients' companies. So just keep that in mind. So if you need to do it after the 60 days, do a conversion, you're going to need to most likely start a new QBO company and then import into that one. Okay. All right. For QuickBooks Enterprise and QuickBooks Mac, with Mac, there's no other steps at this point. You just follow the same thing. I think it's exactly the same. This slide is a little bit old. On an older version of Mac, you may see this where you're going to go to File, Export to QuickBooks Online, and then it will send it off to you. In QuickBooks Enterprise, you still get the same screens, but there's an additional step. You're going to press that F2 button to bring up the product information screen that I showed you earlier, and then once it's open, you're going to click Control plus BQ, and what that will do is it'll launch that screen where you signed into your QBOA account, and then you'll follow the steps that we just talked about. Okay, so a couple different, a little bit different in Enterprise than in regular QBO. So importing lists. So there are situations excuse me, where we decide that maybe we don't want to convert to QuickBooks. We don't want to convert the desktop file to QuickBooks, and it's better to start with beginning balances and only import our lists. And we can do that. We can import our customer, vendor, products and services list and our chart of accounts into QuickBooks Online. So the list only method. So this is called the spreadsheet method. In this particular method, what we would do is we would start in QuickBooks Desktop and we would export our list to an IIF file. Okay? So in here, let me go ahead and open up QuickBooks and I'll show you what that looks like. And let me just take a peek at the time, make sure that we're doing great on time. Okay, so what I would do here is I would go to File, Utilities, Export, List to IIF Files, and then I would select the lists that I want to export. Okay, and I would want to do them one at a time so that I end up with 4 separate files. Okay, I'd click OK to export it, and we're going to put it in, let's see, my documents, and actually, you know what? And then I'm going to put it, actually I'm going to put it right on my desktop. That'll be easier for me. And I'm going to call this customers. Okay, I'm going to click save, and my data's been exported successfully. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import, I'm going to open that information. Oops. I would go into my QuickBooks file, and I would click on the gear icon, and then I would choose Import Data. And right here is where I can import my data. This is the Import Data screen. I would choose the type of data that I want to import. So in this case, that was a customer list, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to download a sample file. The reason I want to do this is because it's going to put the data in the appropriate format so that I can import it into QBO, and all of the fields will automatically be mapped. So to do that, I just click Download a Sample File and go and open up that file, right? Hopefully it's going to open for me. Let's see. You know what? I think that I don't think I can open that up, but for some reason it's giving me an error. I would open it up. I'm going to tell you about it instead. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to open up that file, and then I would copy the information from that IIF file that I had into the different columns in this sample company. And I'm not sure why that's not opening as an Excel file. Let me see if, because I definitely have Excel on here. So let me see if I can try and open with. Let's see, open with, and more apps, and let me see. Well, I don't see it, so I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But anyway, I would copy it into the new file, and then to import it, I would just browse for the file, the Excel file, and that would be in here. And I would choose my customers. I would click Open, and then I click Next, and then you'll see how it's all nicely mapped to the fields in QuickBooks Online. So these are the QuickBooks Online fields, and these are my fields. Okay? And then I would click Next, and let me see if I can find, if I have a resale number here, and I don't. So I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to click Next, and then it's going to show me the data right here in this grid if I needed to change anything. So I don't want the opening balance to come in to this company because that's just going to mess things up for me. So I'm actually going to change this. This is the date. This is the balance. This is what I wanted. So I want these to change to 0 because I don't want these balances to come in. So I can change that right here, right? Or I could just make it blank, which is pretty cool, because that makes it really easy for me to check my information before I actually import it. And I've got to put a date in here, so we'll put in today's date. What's today? The 10th, right? There we go. And then once I've put in all the information, then I should be able to import. Now this is from this. This was like another line on my sheet, so I got to unselect that. That's why this wasn't blue before. Then I click Import, and the information gets imported, and it tells me that it's been successful. Okay, so that's importing our list. That's the first method that we're talking about. So we would export it, we'd convert it over into that Excel spreadsheet, go into QBO, the gear icon, import data, click on the customers, and then follow that utility to map it and pull it in. Okay, and then this is just a slide showing you what I just did. Okay, then there's the new .qbw file method, and this is actually my favorite method. In this method, what we would actually do is we'd create a new company from an existing company file, and this is only available on QuickBooks Accountant 2015 or later. So, I'm sorry, 2012 or later, 2015 or later, and what this does is this allows us to copy the company info from another company. So it'll bring over all of our lists. So we select the company we want to copy, and then we give the new company a name. And typically it's to convert list to QBO is a perfect name for this company because it lets us know exactly what we're doing, what that company's for. Then once we do that, it's going to remove all the transactions. So I'm not going to have any transactions in that QuickBooks Desktop file. I'm only going to have a blank file with all the lists in it. And then at that point, I can convert it to QBO, and all of my lists come over beautifully. So that's a great shortcut to convert your file. All right, so that's it for converting, for the conversion process. Now we're going to talk about some things to do after we complete that conversion process. What are the best practices after we convert? So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the import summary report. If you do a conversion and you're the accountant user in that company, you're going to get an import summary report sent to you from Intuit that gives you information both about the QuickBooks Desktop company and the QuickBooks Online company. So right here we're seeing the QuickBooks Online company details, we have our Desktop company details, and then it shows us everything that came over, and it also shows us if there's any differences. So right here under accounts, we had a desktop count of 86. Our online count is only 83. So I had 3 differences. And if I click on the account details, it will actually show me exactly what didn't come over. So this makes it really easy for me to see how that conversion went. I love this tool. The other thing about this wonderful tool is right down here, these blue hyperlinks give us information, other resources to help us resolve some of those errors. Okay, so if anything happens that doesn't come over, we can see what it is, and then it's actually giving us help on how to resolve it. And like I said, if you've converted over, it doesn't look right, you can go back into the QuickBooks Desktop company file, correct the errors, and then do the conversion process over again. So really great. I really like this a lot. You also see right down here where it says unmatched account balances, and we see right here that sales tax payable account from the desktop and the State Board of Equalization now has a balance. Remember I told you that the, QBO creates a new sales tax payable account for every agency. So right here we can see how that's happening, which is really great. And then the other one that you would see most frequently is the difference if you pull over a file with inventory in it, you're going to see that difference in evaluation. So your balances and inventory are going to be different. And you'll see right here, you can see exactly what's going on there. You can see there was a difference in the valuation, and it offset that difference to the cost of goods sold account. So I love this. This is a really, really nice feature. And Donna's saying she wants to clarify if the account wasn't added upon conversion, then this import summary report is not available. Absolutely, Donna, you got it. You got it. So this next slide talks about it. So this is how you get the import summary report, is the accountant creates a new QBO company, and the accountant performs the in-product conversion. They're going to get that import summary report. If the client performs an in-product conversion, they do it themselves, but you're the accountant user, you're going to get the report, not the client. The only person that gets this report is the accountant user, not the regular user. So Melanie's asking how we can get these slides because they're different. The only thing that should be different with these slides, Melanie, is the wrapper that they came in. The slides, the content in the slides should be exactly the same. Okay? All right, so that's the import summary report, and that comes in an email. Whoops, let me click back for a minute. That comes in an email. You'll get an email that your file is converted. You'll get a second email with this import summary report. So it's pretty awesome. Okay, and Aaron's asking, is there any way to get an import summary if you weren't the accountant at the time of the transfer? No, you have to be the accountant user at the time of the transfer. Okay? All right. So after we do that, we have that import summary report, which is awesome because that really helps us. The last step is we want to compare reports in both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online on an accrual basis for all dates. And the reports we want to look at are the profit and loss report and the balance sheet report. And we just want to make sure that all of those balances line up in both of the companies. Okay, so we want to make sure that those line up and they look okay, and that's our final proof that everything came over correctly and our records are complete. Okay, next step is we're going to go into the gear icon, into the accountant settings for most setup preferences. We're going to connect our bank and credit card feeds. We can reconcile if we needed to. Now remember that the reconcile, if you remember the reconcile, the balances come over. So all of our transactions that were marked R in QuickBooks Desktop are going to come over marked R, and our beginning balances should be fine. So really, we shouldn't have to do like a mock reconcile to get those balances correct. They should already come over. But if you need to, you can do that. You also want to go through and customize reports. So if you had memorized reports inside QBO, then then you're going to need to go through and recreate those reports in QuickBooks Online. So, and I think I just said that backwards. If you had custom reports in Desktop, you're going to need to recreate those in QuickBooks Online. It says create or edit recurring transactions. So those memorized transactions are coming over now. And actually, a little tip for you is if you have a lot of recurring transactions or memorized transactions in Desktop that you no longer use, make sure you clean that up before you do the conversion, because all those memorized transactions are going to come over as recurring transactions. And you can find those right here. If you click on the gear icon, you'll find them right here under Lists and Recurring Transactions. Okay, right here. Okay. You'll customize your templates. So the sales form templates in Desktop do not come over to QBO, so you're going to need to go through and do those. To do that, you're going to go into your preferences. So you're going to go to the gear icon, Accounting and Settings, and these are where all your preferences are. So I recommend that you go through each one and make sure that the setting is exactly what you want. Okay, so just go through, look at them all, make sure that that they're set up the way that you expect. To customize the forms in QBO, you just click this Customize Look and Feel, and this is where you can edit the custom form styles. Okay, so you can go through and you can change the appearance of your forms. Okay. The other thing that you have available to you as far as customizing forms, if you click into QuickBooks Labs, which is also under the gear icon, you also now have this import style, which allows you to import a document, a Word doc, and then map your fields in QuickBooks to that Word doc. So you can really customize your documents. And somebody was playing around with trying to create a QuickBooks Desktop file inside to convert it over to Word, and they actually were able to do that. I think it took a little while for them to figure it out, but they were able to do it, which was pretty cool. And I think there's actually an article somewhere about that. I wish I had it for you, but maybe if you Google it, you could find it. You're going to want to set up the closing date password. So the closing date will come over, but the password won't, so you're going to want to make sure that you do that. And then you're going to want to go through and set up your users. To set up the users, you're going to click this gear icon and then Manage Users. And then from here, you can add the users. And the number of users and the type of users that you can add is going to depend on what subscription level you're in. Okay? And then payroll, you'll choose your payroll services, but we already talked about it. You want to do that. You want to get that set up before you do the conversion. You want to make sure that you've got everything ready to go before you actually do the conversion, and then you'll have to go through and do some of your tweaking as far as making sure that the balances came over correctly, setting up the e-file preferences and the e-payment preferences inside QuickBooks Online. We also have the QuickBooks Online App for Mac and Windows. So this is a free app. You can find it at apps.com. And what it is it's a proprietary browser that Intuit created to run QBO. Totally free, and it comes in both Mac and Windows formats. You can download it onto your computer, and it gives you more of a desktop-ish feel. This is also available for your clients, not just you. So if you have a client that's converting from desktop and they're nervous about it, this gives them more of a desktop-ish feel because it's got these drop-down menus that they're used to seeing. Let me show you what I mean. When you access it as an accountant user, you'll have access to all of your QuickBooks companies, just like you do inside QBOA. So you'll still have that client switcher, you'll still have all your tools, you'll still have your client list, You'll still be able to access your books. So just keep in mind that that's all going to be the same. The only difference that you're going to have, or one of the only differences, is you're going to now have these drop-down menus inside the app. I also find people really like the app because the performance tends to be a little bit better. You're not having issues with cookies getting jammed up in the browser. Some people say that it runs a little bit faster. You also can have multiple windows and tile them across multiple screens, which people really like. So that's really nice. The other thing is the reports. If you have a report open inside the app and you make a change, it will actually refresh in the app, which is really nice. So these are free, totally free, the QuickBooks Online apps for Mac and Windows. And this is just, you can see that the interface from here down is exactly the same as inside the browser. It looks exactly the same. Let me show you. So if I go in here, it's just taking a second to load, it looks the same. So I still have my client list. I still have all of the same information that I'm used to seeing. So very cool. All right, so to get it, again, you're going to go to quickbooks.intuit.com/apps or apps.com, and there's one for both PC and Mac. All right, so summary. So we are come to the conclusion of our webinar. Oh, it's right at the top of the hour, so perfect timing. You should be able to list the steps to convert from desktop to QuickBooks Online, recognize the limitations of converting, recognize alternatives to converting, and then identify things to do after converting. QuickBooks Connect. So QuickBooks Connect is happening on October 24th through the 26th in San Jose. Really hope that you're going to be out there. I really hope that you'll be out there and you'll join us. It's going to be accountants, developers, small businesses, all under one roof, learning from each other's world-class training, great speakers. You can see there Michael Phelps and Simone Biles will be there. Really, really great information. This will be my second year going. I'm very excited. I hope to see a bunch of you there as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put up the CPE poll, and then I'm going to stay on for a few minutes, to answer questions if you like. So go ahead and put that up. You need to put in the CPE, answer the question with the CPE that word that I gave you halfway through. I'm going to leave this up for just a second. And don't forget, the CPE certificates will be emailed directly to you within 3 weeks of today. You've got to keep a copy of it for your records. And then if you're using Gmail, check your spam or junk folder. Sometimes that goes in there by mistake. So, if you're not seeing it going, go ahead and check that. Okay. All right, I'm going to leave that up for just another minute. It looks like 92% of you have voted. And I'm going to close it out in just a second. Oh, we're almost at 100%. That's awesome. Sherry says that she loves the beaches in Rhode Island, and today would be a great beach day. Yes, they are beautiful. I love them too. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and close out our poll. And like I said, I'll stay on for a minute with any questions that you might have. And let me just see, and here's my thank you. So I will be here if you have any questions. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to spend with me. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope to see you in another webinar soon. And yeah, have a great day. Thank you.